Hello, good evening, everybody. If I sound a little different today, it's for two reasons. Um, okay, let's make it three. My dog in the background. Gizmo, please stop. So, first reason is my new mic. I'd like to introduce you to Mike, and Mike, please meet my viewers. And the second reason is because I am speaking English today. Ooh. So today is my first English speaking episode, and in it I will be covering a notorious bizarre case that happened in Egypt not long ago, 2005, maybe long ago, but it just doesn't sound too long ago because I'm saying 2000. The year 2000 is in there, so it's not that long ago. Nonetheless, it is a very, very bizarre case, and it hasn't been solved. The case is not, unfortunately, I can't say that this case is not solved because the Egyptian police is doing their best, but they just can't figure out what's going on. As we go on and we figure out what the Egyptian police did and what happened in this case, we'll see that it wasn't exactly, not much effort was put into solving it. Nonetheless, it is a very, very bizarre case. And because it was a very bizarre case, kind of the cops were like, okay, I don't think we're going to even try with this one. And we're just going to cover it as whatever. I want you to reflect on one thing before we get started, okay? I want you to reflect on whether or not you believe in the Pharaoh's curse or the Egyptian Pharaoh's curse. I'm not saying that this is what happened here, but the pharaohs are gonna come into effect, and that's what makes this case very bizarre and very Egyptian. It is a very, very interesting case, and I highly doubt any of my American viewers have ever heard of it. And that's the reason why I started this show to begin with, is because I wanted to talk about cases that nobody has ever heard of before. And maybe I could bring some international cases that were notorious around the world, but the American viewer or the average person, the average couch sleuth didn't hear about this case. So that's why I started this show to begin with, and I believe that this case will serve me so good because I love covering mystery, I love covering foreign cases, and I'm Egyptian. So best way to begin is with a mystery that is Egyptian, and it is obviously a foreign case. And okay, so this case will start on December 20th. It's in a town called, or a village, I should say, called Beni Mazar. And Beni Mazar is in the city of Minya. And Minya is, it's in south of Egypt, about 224 kilometers away from Egypt. And they call it Upper Egypt, even though that it's in the south. And that's because Egyptian geography is kind of backwards, is kind of upside down because of the flow of the Nile. So we consider the upstream from the Nile is Upper Egypt, and the lower part of the Nile is Lower Egypt, which is the opposite. Upper Egypt is Southern Egypt, and Lower Egypt is considered the capital and Northern Egypt. And that's where the capital is, Cairo. And then when we go 224 kilometers south, we'll get to El Minya. And then we drive a little further and we get into Beni Mazar. Beni Mazar is a farm town. It's a farm village, farming community. That's all they do there is farming. And that's basically it. Very, very, very simple life. I mean, very simple life. There's no crime. Crime is unheard of there. And if there is a crime, then it is either a revenge crime. And revenge is usually never taken against children or women. or an honor killing, and an honor killing is never taken against a man. It's always a woman or a girl. This case starts on December 29th, 2005. It was around 5:30 in the morning. There was a guy, he was a baker in the town, and I mentioned this in my Arabic show, and I said that in some reports his name is such and such, and in other reports he has a different name, so I'm just not going to mention his name. That baker usually goes to the morning prayers in the mosque, and then he goes to his mom's house. He has breakfast with her and his brother, and then he kisses her hand, takes her blessing, and goes off to work. He went to his mom's house that day, or like I said, around 5:30 or so. He opens up the door. Everything is very, very quiet, eerily quiet, and the entire house is very dark. And that's not the usual, because his mom usually leaves the hall light on all night. So he's taken aback, but maybe she forgot to leave it. Maybe just that one night she woke up earlier and turned it off. He didn't know, so he decided to go into his mom's bedroom and check what's going on. He went into his mom's bedroom to find her covered in her own blood, and she is lying on her bed in the position that she sleeps in, and she's bleeding. He didn't know from where. He could tell that she's bleeding from more than one spot. He gets very, very concerned, or obviously a little bit more than concerned, and he goes to his brother's room to wake him up to see what's going on. His brother's name is Taha, and he works as a lawyer. He's 28 years old. So he goes and he tries to wake him up, and he finds the same thing. His brother is also covered in blood. That baker starts screaming at the top of his lungs as loud as he possibly can. He screamed so loud that he passed out from the screaming. All this is happening, and people in the neighbors in that particular village, or in usually in Upper Egypt in general, the houses are right next to each other, and sometimes they even share a wall. So, and it's 5:30 in the morning. Everything is quiet. They hear the screams coming. Right next door, there is a girl named Zainab and her sister. Her name is Hashim, and both of them were they were in a separate room that was on the roof of their house, and they just spent the night there. They didn't sleep. They just stayed up all night, talking, laughing, eating snacks, and just having some sister time. And they end their night, and they're on their way downstairs to go back to their home, and they hear the screams of that baker, and they're like, what's going on? They get very, very scared, and they run into their home to find their family in the same position that the baker found his family in. They found 4 of their family members. They found their dad. His name is Ahmed Abu Bakr, and he's 48 years old. Their mom, her name is Busaina, and she's 35 years old. They have 2 children, and they have one girl. Her name is Asma, and she's about 10 years old. And they have a baby. His name is Mahmoud, and he is 10 months old. He's not even a year old yet. Zainab and Hashim start screaming and yelling and hollering. Of course, people, they went to the baker's house at first, but then they heard Zainab and Hashim screaming, so they started coming to their house as well. And people were at both houses, and they didn't know what was going on, and just people were everybody had questions. At that very moment, there was a little child, and again, he had 2 different names in different reports, so I'm not going to mention his name. He spent the night at his grandma's house, and he was on his way to school, but then he realized that he left his science book at home and he needed it. So he had to go back to his own home to retrieve his science book. He's on his way back, and he sees that the entire town is at their neighbors' houses, the two houses that they live next to. The entire town is there, and everybody is screaming and yelling, and all he could hear is blood. They killed them. They smashed their skulls. All he could hear is very scary words. So he gets very scared, and he runs in to his own house to find his family. He finds his mom Sabah, and she's 26 years old. She's in a pool of her own blood. His dad Mahmoud, he was in a pool of his own blood. And his brother Ahmed, and he's 8 years old. And his sister Fatma, and she's 7 years old. He sees that, and he starts screaming as loud as he possibly can, again, to bring people to his house too, because his family is in the same position. And he screams as loud as he can, but the shock actually gave him a heart attack, and he passed away that moment. Right now we have 11 dead bodies. 10 of them they're obviously they have been murdered, and people don't know what's going on. They have no idea what happened. What is the common factor between all these three families? What were they looking for? Who did this to them? Who would kill a baby? Who would kill a woman? Who would kill a child? Who would kill a man? Who would kill an elderly woman? From grandparents' age to a baby, we're all victims of this perpetrator, and nobody knows what happened. So obviously they call the police right away, and the police shows up. And as I mentioned, as soon as they take one look at the crime scene, they know that this is a little bigger than they can handle. First of all, it's a small village in Egypt. It's not equipped with the best cops. As a matter of fact, this is going to sound really bad, and I really don't like to pick on the police of my own country. It is a known fact that cops sometimes get punished by being moved to areas like Beni Mazar. So they're not necessarily equipped with the best cops. They're not equipped with the best investigative tools. The country at the time wasn't exactly in turmoil, in any kind of political turmoil, but it was under a dictatorship. It was under the dictatorship of Mubarak. It was five whole years before the revolution in 2010. So of course, the crime is not, especially a crime in Upper Egypt, is not going to get a priority. We just need to close this case, and that's what the Egyptian, sorry. That's what the Egyptian authority likes to do. They like to close cases. Whether they close it with the right perpetrator behind bars or not, that is not much of their concern. A very common question that the authorities ask in Egypt is, who seeks treatment for some kind of mental illness? Who has any kind of mental illness? In Egypt, that's it is considered a shame to this very day, unfortunately. They just say he's a person that's mentally ill, and that's why they did that. And that's the motive. And that's how they explain any crime that can't be explained. Unfortunately, that's how they explain most of crimes done against one certain religion in the country. Unfortunately, that's the explanation they like to go to. So that's the question they asked. Who in here seeks treatment? Or who in here is following up with a psychiatrist? So they refer the police to a guy named Muhammad Abdel Latif. They refer Muhammad Abdel Latif to the authorities, and they arrest him. And there's another practice that's not it's not common. I only heard of it in South Korea, where if there is a person that committed a crime, they arrest him, and if they can't find him, they can arrest his brothers or his sisters or his dad or his mom. They can arrest whoever just to pressure him into coming in and surrendering. So that's what they did. They arrested Muhammad Abdul Latif, and they actually arrested his brother and his dad with them. And they took them all for questioning in the police station. And when I say questioning, I mean they used torturous methods, they used electricity, they used beating, they used intimidation, they used anything that they had in their arsenal. They used against Muhammad. They used it against his dad, his elderly dad. They used it against his brother as well. And they did that for 4 days straight. They didn't let him rest. They didn't let him sleep. They didn't feed him. They didn't do anything other than beat him, electrocute him, threaten him. And all they wanted him to do was confess and say, I did this. And they promised him that they will get him out of it. They will say that he's mentally ill. They will put him in the hospital a few months and he'll get out. So, of course, he said, no, I didn't do it. I can't do, obviously he can't do it. It's 10 people. They didn't even check the injuries to the victims. And speaking of, let's together explore the injuries on the victims, on all 10 victims, okay? All 10 victims had the same exact injuries, exactly. The same exact method, almost by measurement. Nobody was spared, and nobody got anything extra. They all got the same injuries. Every single one was, their skull was smashed in. Their stomach was opened from throat to down beyond the navel. They had a cut in their throats were cut, and they were cut in the shape of a letter S. All of them. And I mean, when somebody is cutting, not just a human, if they're cutting an animal, if they're cutting anything, they'll move, they'll resist, even if you're cutting a vegetable, it's kind of hard to make a precise mark. But according to the medical examiner, those were precise. Those were exactly the same. The other injury that was very horrific as well was all of their sexual organs were mutilated. The men's penises were all cut off, and they weren't in the crime scene. And the women's breasts were cut off as well, and that was also missing. And those were the injuries, all of them. Like I said, nobody was spared and nobody got extra. So it was very bizarre that the perpetrator was so precise to do that. There was one detail that is very, very bizarre. On every single victim, they had a black dove's head on their body. But it wasn't like somebody took a black dove and slaughtered it and took the head and put it on there. No, somebody actually separated it by force and separated the head from the body of the dove and only kept the head and put it on the bodies. Every single person had that. So that tells you that's the same perpetrator. And also it tells you that there's definitely more than one perpetrator. So it's very, very bizarre that they would want to pin it on just one person. But they insisted that he was gonna take the blame for it. So as I mentioned, they tortured him, electrocuted him, beat him for 4 full days, never let him sleep or rest or eat or anything. And on the 5th day, when they see that nothing is affecting him, or they can't really get him to confess, they decided to do something a little bit, a little bit more sinister and nasty. They actually went and they arrested his sisters and the daughters of his sisters. I'm not sure how many there were, but I know that that's what his lawyer said, but that's what he said as well. They brought his sisters and they tore their clothes off in front of him, and they told him, if you don't confess to this crime, we're gonna rape your sisters right in front of you. We're gonna rape your sister's daughters right in front of you. So it's in your hand to save your sisters and your sister's daughters. And of course, honor is valued more than anything in Upper Egypt. So he didn't last more than 1 minute under that kind of pressure, and he said that he will confess and he will tell them what happened. They took him to the crime scene. He didn't tell them what happened. They told him what happened, and he agreed with it. And then they decided to take him to court. And how would they take him to court and prove that he did it? Because next to the confession, there has to be some kind of evidence so that the judge will actually put him in jail, or actually will uphold the guilty verdict. So they brought a shoe, one shoe, not a pair, but one shoe, and they said that these are his shoe, and there is a drop of blood from this victim from this house, and there's another drop of blood from this victim from that house, and they said, oh, let's just put him in jail. He did it. He went to court a couple of times, and the lawyers that went with him weren't as equipped to fight in such a notorious case. They really almost got Muhammad, and he was almost convicted until a lawyer, and his name was Talat Sadat, and he's actually Anwar Sadat, the former Egyptian president's cousin. So Talat Sadat was a very good lawyer, and he actually showed up with Muhammad to court, and he asked him, how can you believe that those are his shoes? He wears size 47 and those are size 42. He can't even fit his 2 toes in there. How can he possibly be the perpetrator? Beside the fact that this is a very, very organized crime. As I mentioned, that dove's head, or that pigeon's head that they found on their bodies, that speaks volumes about it being an organized crime. And why would an organized crime come and hit a place like Beni Mazar, in a very small village in Egypt? I'll tell you why. Or actually, I'm going to tell you the point of view of Dr. Mohammed al-Sheikh, and he is actually the medical examiner in Egypt. He wasn't the medical examiner that was in charge of this case, because he started his career in 2009, but he was, and this case obviously is in 2005, but he was very interested in it, and he offered his opinion, and that's actually the people of the village's opinion. It is no secret in Egypt that Beni Mazar, or Upper Egypt in general, is a hotbed for the Pharaoh's artifacts. And it is needless to say that Pharaoh's artifacts are very, very valuable. I know that we've all, anybody that is interested in anything paranormal have read, that's probably one of the first stories that they've read about is the Pharaoh's curse. But I'm not talking about Pharaoh's curses. I'm not talking about how they used black magic to cast curses. It is no secret that the ancient Egyptians or the pharaohs valued life after death maybe even more than life itself. Life after death, they had to prepare for it, and they liked to protect their valuables. They believed that you take whatever your valuables with you, whatever you like. Sometimes they even took their pets with them. The ancient Egyptians, they would deal with the black magicians, and they would obviously, if there was a big pharaoh or a king or something, they had a nice big powerful magician that will help them protect their valuables. How would they protect those valuables? They would cast black magic spells on them, and have an entity protect their valuables. And that entity depends on the magician that casted it or called upon it. If the magician is powerful, then that entity is going to be very powerful. If that magician is not very powerful, then that entity is not going to be very powerful. Obviously, the graves of these kings is going to be, as I mentioned, a hotbed for artifacts, gold or precious jewels, or even if it's not a precious jewel and it's not gold, if it's a fork that came from the pharaohs, then it's going to be it can change someone's life. Right now in Egypt, it's a very common practice to use that black magic to just find the grave site to begin with, and the black magic would reveal where they need to dig, and then they would do their digging, and they would use even more black magic to actually open it and to have that entity let go of that grave site and the valuables that are in it. How does that entity let go? With a list of demands. The demands are usually very, very disturbing, very, very bizarre, very, very bloody, violent, just like what happened in Bani Mazar. Dr. Muhammad al-Sheikh thinks that that entity demanded the souls of 10 people. And they have to be women, men, and children, whether they're older or younger, whatever. They needed their sexual organs because they didn't find them at all. They needed to put a black pigeon or a dove on their dead bodies, just to claim that those dead bodies are for that entity. And the other thing that really gave it away is the letter S on their necks, because it stands for Satan. I know it sounds like Egypt is going through their own satanic panic. And I know it sounds like we just don't know what happened, so we're gonna blame the devil and the black magic and the Pharaoh's curse on these things. But we're not blaming the Pharaoh's curse on these things. We are blaming the practices of black magic. This is the practice of black magic. Whether somebody found the grave site or not, we don't know. Whether somebody was really made that kind of communication or not, we don't know. We just know that these demands and this kind of crime will only come from the devil's mouth. We only know that this kind of crime will only come with that kind of price. That's the only motive for a crime like that that happened in Egypt. With it being, like I said, as I mentioned, a hotbed for artifacts, and the potential of getting rich is everywhere. And unfortunately, the poor is also everywhere. We know for a fact that it was more than one person. We know for a fact that it was not a random act, and it was not just somebody that felt violent that day and lost it and went and killed 10 people. We know that it was a violent act, and it was a deliberate act, and we know that it was very deliberate, because, as I mentioned, every injury happened to each and every one of the victims. So that's somebody that knows, I'm gonna go in there, I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna smash the skulls. I'm gonna open up the stomachs. I'm gonna do the neck, the cut in the neck, and I'm gonna cut out their sexual organs, and I'm gonna leave the head of the pigeon on their bodies. So it's a very, very methodical crime that it's almost impossible that a schizophrenic man alone could do it. We also had two, let's not forget about Zainab and Hashim. They stayed up all night. They didn't sleep at all that night. And they didn't hear a sound. They didn't even hear, ouch. They didn't hear nothing. Nothing. These people, they didn't even wake up when the person right next to them died. How did they do that? We're not sure. We don't know. All we know is that there was more than one person in there that day. And the motive was probably just to get artifacts and to appease some sort of entity that they thought that they were serving. And I truly believe that this case will never be solved, because for many reasons. First, like as I mentioned, it's the crime scene was scrambled all over. I mean, like I said, the people were screaming, and people from all over the town were coming, and they were in and out of those 3 houses like crazy. And I don't think the Egyptian authorities are very interested in solving it. They're just they're glad that the old regime, or Mubarak's regime, is gone, and a crime like that will not go unpunished anymore. Let's hope it will not go unpunished anymore. And if anything like that happens again, there will be a thorough investigation, and we'll find out who did this. This marks the end of this episode. Please, if you liked this episode, please give me a thumbs up. Let me know what you think of if it's the Pharos curse. What do you think? Do you think our world can cross over with the paranormal, or do you think we're in our own world? That's if that world exists to begin with. Or do you think that Beni Mazar had nothing to do with the devil, and it was just a few angry, violent people that did this? Okay, so I will, please like and share. Please subscribe to my channel, because I will be doing a lot more, not just Egyptian cases, but I will be going around the world, and I'm gonna get, I know a lot of cases from possibly Europe and Algeria and Morocco and a lot of places, and India. There are a few cases that are very, very bizarre, and the more bizarre, the better for me. So those are the kind of cases you will find on my channel. If that's what you're looking for, please go ahead and subscribe. Also, tell your friends about me, because I tell them about you, and I'll see you again soon. Bye! I'm talking about how they used black magic. Black magic I said that. As we all know, okay, now we don't all know. Why would you know? You don't know that. You're American. Their life after death, for them took a lot of preparation. Whether, yeah, I can't think I can talk. Okay, so they, yeah,